Hey, good morning, Shabbat Shalom. A few years ago, I remember that we all had signs and lawn signs and rallies for Danny Fenster. If you remember, he was the journalist who was he was from Huntington Woods, I believe, but being held prisoner in Malaysia. He was a journalist, and we had the signs, and we had the prayers, and we had the protests, and the articles, and Danny came home, and he was okay. And I believe he's actually still a journalist, and he's going around the world, and he's still doing very important work. But it worked, and he came home. And Hirsch didn't come home, and neither did the others. And I think that that's why this hurt more this week than, I don't want to say than all the others, but there was something about this because we really believed if we said his name enough and we protested enough that he'd come home. And he didn't come home. And when I see the number of chairs are diminishing, it breaks my heart. And I have been filled with rage, been filled with anger, filled with sadness, with frustration. And I want revenge. But this is exactly why the Torah says that's not the way to be. I feel it, but I cannot act on it, because the Torah demands justice and not vengeance. Our Torah portion says, tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, justice, justice will you pursue, lema'an tichya v'yarashta ata aretz. You pursue justice because that is how you inherit the land. It's not just for someone else, it's the preservation of our soul. The people who inherit the land, it's not because of who they are, it's because of what they do. And I want to express my pain and my anger and my hatred for these perpetrators, whose name I will not profane this sanctuary with. But I do not want to lose my soul by doing so. We have to bring people to justice, but it can't be out of a sense of destroying them and destroying everyone they are connected to, because then we lose who we are, and when we lose who we are going to lose the land. And if we lose the land, we are never getting it back. We have waited 2,000 years for this moment, and we cannot give up. We have to defend ourselves, we have to fight, but we have to do it the right way. The Torah is very clear on this. Without justice, without tzedek and mishpat, without a society that follows its laws for everybody, we will lose the land and we will never get it back, and that is not happening on my watch. And this is hard, and I am just as angry as all of you are, and I am just as frustrated. But we have to remember that even the person we hate the most was still created by God in exactly the same way as we are. In Malachi, the prophet Malachi says, Halo av echad lechulanu, halo el echad biraenu, madua nivgad ish ba'achav, lechalel barit avotenu. Do we not have all one parent? Did not one God create us? We cannot profane the covenant of our ancestors. Okay, people need to be brought to justice. People have done terrible things, and they need to pay. But it has to be mishpat achad, it has to be one law for all, because there are some Jews in the area, not this area, but in the Middle East, who are doing terrible things too. We cannot excuse their behavior and say that another person who's doing the same thing, who isn't Jewish, they need to be brought to justice, but you have to understand why the Jews are doing it. We will lose the land if we have injustice, and part of that injustice is excusing terrible behavior by some of our brothers and sisters. Not a lot of them, but enough. We cannot ask the world to condemn our enemies while we excuse our friends for doing the same thing. That's not tzedek. We are at a moment in history that will reverberate, I believe, for centuries. The history of the Jewish people in its ancestral homeland is at stake. And we are among the only generations of Jews in the entire history of our people who can do something about it. We have to defend ourselves. We have to defend ourselves the right way. We have to have a homeland, but we have to make sure that that homeland follows justice, and that we don't just say, if you're Jewish, you get away with it, and if you're not Jewish, you don't get away with it. The Torah is clear, and there's no point in having a Jewish homeland if the Torah doesn't matter. Right? We can argue over ritual, but the Torah is clear on what it demands from us. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Even in the midst of your rage and in the midst of your pain, you have to pursue justice. And when we do, we will live on the land forever. Shabbat Shalom.